fighting and a lot more crawling to the. They're trying to do one step at a time. Like, let's get NIL, let's get the portal, there's a lot on the plate for nobody because there's no one to universally run this thing. So it's different varying degrees of states and legislators and ADs, and goodness gracious, it's what a mess. Is the quarterback competition still open, Edgar, at the University of Florida?
I mean, Anthony Richardson won the job during the spring game if he hadn't already had it. Jack Miller, the Ohio State transfer, was garnering some interest, outside, the program. Behind closed doors, we're not sure. Practices they're closed beyond closed, honestly. I mean, you get to see a little bit of a window at the beginning, but you can't discern anything there.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw the spring game, and Jack Miller looked pretty erratic, and Anthony looked transcendent for 2 series at least. And then from there was okay, but he made enough of a statement those first 2 series where you were like, okay, he looked very in control, made quick reads, very accurate throws. And there was one instance, I think, where he ran, which is one of his great skills. And you were like, nobody's beating this guy out. Now, the reality is he's going to have to stay healthy, which he wasn't able to do last season. He's a big-bodied kid. He's 6'4", 237-ish. He is almost so powerful for his body that you were talking about running, or whatever. I mean, I exercise. You can only put so much stress on those joints, no matter how young you are. And when he's just the explosiveness of a guy that size and strength, he almost like pulls things. I was never fast enough to pull a hamstring. Well, he is. He's powerful. And so they got to monitor how his body, reacts and things. And I know they're really digging in on the details and the data of how to do that and monitoring him because they got to keep him healthy. And it's going to be interesting because he's going to be carrying such the offensive load because he's really the one true playmaker on that offense you can rely on. There are a few others that could emerge, but he's the one guy. And he needs to be the real deal for this team to make headway because the schedule's brutal, man. And the offense is new and guys are going to be learning, and they really don't have a whole lot of playmaking capability at this point.
It's interesting. They're opening with – have they ever played Kentucky this early? Like week 2?
Oh, yeah, they play Kentucky in week 2 often.
Is it week 2? Why did I always think it was like later in the season?
It's often week 2 or 3, but the one they lost to Mullen, when Mullen lost, you remember, that was week 2 when Marco Wilson blew his knee out in 18. They played him in week 2 with McElwain in 16, beat him 45-7 here, really beat the doors off Stoops. Otherwise, they beat him pretty soundly in 2020. Other than 16 and 2020, that has been a tough game ever since Mark Stoops has been there, other than his first year. So 3 out of whatever the 10 meetings against Mark Stoops, it's been a pretty legit game for the Gators, and they're lucky to win a number of them. So that's a tough week 2 game.
And it's just 2 physical teams back to back, 2 well-coached physical teams right out the gate, which I love. Now, as a Tennessee guy, I love that just heavy blows to the Florida Gators right out the gate. I like that. But like you said, their schedule's tough, but I don't know. I wish Tennessee if we could slide in to week 3 instead of week 4, because I'm so tired of playing Florida this early in the season. I'm so tired of it, Edgar. That's one of the things we move on. Like if we play Florida last year at the end of the year versus the beginning, it's, I think, a totally different story.
It certainly is.
And
that was Florida's best game last year, probably.
Emory was unstoppable. It's just third downs. He was converting over. He was just death by 1,000 paper cuts is what Dan Mullen did to Tennessee in that one. But I'm very curious because Vegas likes Anthony Richardson and they like Florida in year 1 with Napier, and I'm very curious to see how this goes. What'd you say?
I saw BetterOnline.org has this over under 6.5. I'd set it at 7.5 personally. I wouldn't take 6.
Well, FanDuel had them as like the 4th best odds to win the SEC this upcoming year. FanDuel, I think, had them at number 4. Okay. So it's basically like if Georgia doesn't win the SEC East, they have Florida as the next up to win the East, which is I don't
buy that.
Well, until Tennessee does it, until Tennessee just expels those demons in Knoxville, and I just the
Well, I don't even know if I buy it Tennessee. I don't know. I don't know who it is, but it's
oh,
hard.
who you have the number 2, Kentucky or South Carolina?
I just don't know. It's hard. Look, any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida, let's say all 4 of them, throw them in a hat.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing: is Florida's schedule though is the issue there.
Yeah.
Florida start open, as we talked about. That September's brutal. Utah at home, Pac-12 champ, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky's got some questions to answer, but they're also always physical. They're a well-coached team, and it's a solid program now that's recruited pretty well, especially at Kentucky, very well. USF, athletic. They'll have some guys.
Brought in the Baylor quarterback.
And they're going to be better than last year. Jeff Scott, I think people think, is a pretty good coach, and the program's improving. I mean, it was such a mess when he took it over. Mm-hmm. And then you go to Tennessee. I mean, that's September for you. That's a rough September. Then you get to October. I think you get Eastern Washington. I think Missouri, I believe. Missouri with Drinkwitz is it's a solid program. Okay, maybe not. Forget them. Then you got LSU, though.
Yeah, they're the huge wild card. I have no idea what to make of LSU.
My argument was in LSU, bye week, Georgia at A&M. So
that's
you got
rough.
That 3-game stretch, and then you got that 3 out of 4 game stretch in September, and you got South Carolina coming up in there too. It's like it's a rough schedule, man. So to think Florida's going to finish second based on the schedule, to me is, in 6.5 is the over under. I would still probably take the over, but if it were 7.5, I'd probably take the under. Meaning, I think it's about a 7-win team here.
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what Richardson is. Like, if Richardson's healthy for 12 games and he's a Heisman-type guy, that changes everything and changes how we look at Florida completely.
Indeed.
So that's just a big wild card.